So good evening or greetings. This is Tiffany Savage, the Vice President at Gullah Business of Charleston. I'm here with the President, Nicole Pringle.
Hello, everyone.
And so we have an exciting feature tonight. So we have with us Amari and Cherelle. They have a wonderful, awesome children's book that is currently out there promoting it right now. And it's called the Elle Rays. And so we're excited to have them on. I'm thrilled because I am a librarian for my 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and sometimes 24 hours. But I'm like a reader at heart. And so to see children books with children that are of color and showing representation, I'm thrilled to have them on. And so thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. So the first question I want to ask, what made you decide to come up with the title or Elle Rays of all the titles? What made you go with that one?
Oh, of course. Well, so the Elle Rays actually came about from a family group text. So a lot of us are scattered pretty much throughout the East Coast. We come from a pretty large family. I am number two, and my sister Cherelle, my co-author, is actually the baby of the family. So there's 6 of us total. So to keep in contact, we send pictures and things throughout a group text. And Cherelle has 3 lovely daughters, my nieces, and she sent a picture of them. And in one of the pictures, they were laying in bed holding hands. And me being a writer, the wheels just started turning. I'm like, and I asked her, so why did they do that? And she said, well, they do that, every night, and they sleep in the same bed together. Then I just started thinking about this whole idea of like gaining powers and safety and security. And then I called her at work one day. What was this, the summer of 2019?
Yeah.
We did that a lot. We would talk on the phone at work while we should be working. So that I shared this idea with her, and it turned into like a 2-3 hour phone call about creating this children's book story, using, the girls as using their likeness as inspiration, and kind of stepping into the representation for not only young Black girls, but this generation Alpha, this new young generation coming up. And this whole idea that it's like, well, we don't have any Black female superheroes. And we started talking about, well, what Black female superheroes do we have? And when we couldn't get past Storm, we were like, okay, this is a problem here. Who do our young girls have to look up to, as little girls? Like who inspires them to be powerful and strong? And so we were like, this is perfect timing. I was like, let's go ahead and create this story. And then kind of, there was this big rollout, but
Yeah, well, let me first elaborate on why we chose that name and the Elle Rays. So you have their ending of each of their first names, Ariel, Brielle, and Lily L. So that's where you get the L. And then the Rays is kind of like a play on, them harnessing their powers from the rays of the sun. And, so with Amari seeing them holding hands and me being the metaphysical mind that I am and philosophy and diving into that, I thought to myself, well, maybe they're exchanging some kind of energy. I'm looking at them as like electrons, protons, and neutrons. And it's like
right.
they're harnessing this energy to like explode, and they're forming that atom, that life force. And so for me, it was like, wow, when he came to me with that idea, I was like, this is very intriguing. And I'm like, I love it. And so and in that story, all the girls are individually gifted with 3 life virtues, and those virtues are strength, wisdom, and beauty. And so each virtue actually opens up an endless door of possibilities for each girl to embody unique powers that reflects their personalities, actually, because even for Ariel, she's now a gymnast. And so for her strength comes from her. And it's not always just traditional strength of being strong. It's mental strength as well. And so for Brielle, who is gifted with wisdom, she's my artistic child, and she loves art. She loves animation. She loves to bring things to life. And she has that like old soul to her. And Lily, who's the youngest, Lily L. And we just gave her beauty because even though she was so young at the time, she was only like 3 years old, and she didn't really say much, being a 3-year-old. You just talk to her little toddler tones. And so for her, it was kind of like we give her beauty because she's so sweet and she has the beauty within herself. It's the beauty of the heart that makes her who she is, with the loving, kind nature that she has. So I loved it, and I'm like, we got to run with this. And that's exactly
pretty much
what we did.
So how did that all work? Like, how long did it take you to start writing and from writing and getting it published?
After kind of going through the whole process of trying to, get through the major publishers and, running up and down the East Coast, across to the West Coast, and meeting with agents, meeting with publishers, and spending several years of frustration getting to the door, having the door closed on me. It was going self-publishing for me was like, okay, what's this? If you This is not an option. This is kind of a no-brainer. And so immediately I thought, because of I knew the direction that we wanted to go with the books, and I knew that the major publishers would not approve, I said, well, we're just going to go ahead immediately. We're going to self-publish. So the writing process of it is always for me very organic. So it can take anywhere from a month to probably a year. So I would say for the first book, so there are 3 books currently now in the series. And so the first book, I would say the first book probably took us about 3 months to write.
That's exactly what I was going to say,
Yes.
Mari.
The first book took about 3 months to write, and we completed it and did a little presentation to our family December 19th, right before, the pandemic. But then the first book ended up expanding and growing into more, because we decided to do something that had never been done before, at least from what we have seen, which is that we were going to include chapters in a children's book. So typically children's books are 32 pages, and they're very short and succinct. And our underlying idea about this was really promoting not just representation, but also literacy. We're from Baltimore City, and the literacy rate in 2022 at the time was 29%, and that's of kids who can read proficiently. At high schoolers who could read proficiently. So that means an overwhelming majority cannot read proficiently at that level. So the first portion of the book took about 3 months. When we decided to go into another direction, then it added another 3 months. We take our time. So our writing process is, I ping Cherelle and I'm like, okay, so what are the girls up to today? What happened today? Or can you send me an email about what they did throughout the week? And then I would take those things and then put them into the book format, and the book format that we write in, which is kind of like this, some people call it a rhyming scheme. The technical term for it is a ballad quatrain, or for the simplest way to define that is song format. So it's like every other line rhymes. And because we're focusing on young readers and early readers, we wanted to make sure that it has a fun cadence to it that they can relate to, and it makes it easy for them to understand, as well as making it easy for them to possibly learn or pronounce words that they may not necessarily be familiar with. Because if it sounds like the word, before it, then maybe that might make it easier for me to kind of understand how to pronounce this word.
How do the girls feel about being included in such a great piece of work? Because
Well,
you guys
that's
are
your,
just
your
hitting
answer.
everything with this book.
You know what? So when it started, they were 7, 5, and 3. And at that time they were so young, they were very excited, to see themselves represented in this superhero, this powerful form, right? And they were just on board with everything, and they would go to school telling their friends and just telling their teachers and everything. So they were the promotional little aspect of the book. And they, even though now, so they've gotten older, right? So they're like 12, 10, and 8 now. And they still, so they have activities that they do outside of this. And I think for them, it's just still like this world of, I don't want to say non-belief, but just this belief of, well, because even my 10-year-old would ask me things, well, Bree can do this in the book, but why can't I do that in reality? And so for her, it's this duality with her, but she's trying to still really harness that idea of, all right, I'm a superhero there, but I want to be able to do that same thing here. And I'm like, we can kind of differentiate and have that balance of knowing those true powers that you have within. And that's really what the book is all about, right? To empower the young children, it's primarily the ones of color, to see that they have that power within themselves, that inner power, first, to be able to do extraordinary things. And so for them, it's like, it's still an out of this world experience to know that they're the inspiration behind these superhero characters. And I think it's just going to grow with them with this non-belief of like, they're so like humble with it, where it's like they don't really, now that they're older, they don't really always talk about it much, to their friends, especially my 12-year-old. She's not like going to gymnastics saying, "Hey guys, I'm a superhero." But, because they
That
have their
question.
little, they have their own pre-teenage stuff that they talk about. But but she loves to be able to help out anytime that she can. And with knowing that she's a gymnast, competitive gymnast now, and showcasing that those analogies of her being this powerful gymnast who can also apply that to her strength character in the book. So it all works and all comes together eventually.
Oh, that's awesome. Because I was just gonna ask that question too. Because I'm like, if I had a book about me, I would go to school and tell you.
Exactly.
That's me on that book.
They're so humble. They're too humble, I think, sometimes. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So I want to ask, is that them? I know I visited your social media page, and of course that's where I found out about you guys. And so I saw some of the promos. Was that the girls in the promos promoting the book?
Yes, it depends on which promo you saw.
There were three.
Yes.
I have to go back to it, but I know for sure I saw one with three girls in it. I was
Oh
like, oh,
yeah, that's them. And so they're the face of, they're the avatar that's on the profile picture itself. And
okay.
that's my little ones. And I'm so proud of them because they work so hard, and they're such great children, to where I never have to feel like I'm too overwhelmed, with how I'm raising them. They're very hard workers, and they enjoy what they do, and they love helping me out as much as they can.
That's awesome. You see, Nikki, I would be that kid. I believe that would be. Oh, you mentioned earlier that one of the frustrations when you wrote your book was that you would get to some doors that you felt like they were going to open and closed.
Mhm.
So this leads me to another point. What would you think, or what would you tell an aspiring writer, how to handle those situations when they get to those doors or they get disappointed? What would you tell them, or what advice you would give them?
Well, we have this old saying in writing for writers, which is writing is rewriting. So that means if somebody asks, well, how do I become a writer? And I always say, well, the first thing you have to do is just write. And you don't try to write to make it sound right. Just write what comes to you. And then you go back and rewrite and you clean it up as you go. And it's an ongoing process. So my advice to writers would be um, keep writing, don't stop writing, and don't give up. The today now in 2024, it's so much different than it was when I was out there hitting the streets. And Cherelle was with me like 2003 through like 2007, 2008, going to different book events and a lot of networking. And it was a lot of footwork that you had to do. And now with social media, with technology, like it is a little easier to reach a larger group of people, potential readers, potential agents, etc., than it was once before. Another piece of advice that I would say to a writer is that read as much as you can, because I feel like when it comes to writing, you're only as good as the last book that you read. And so I know that I've really stayed away from, there's certain things that AI can do right now that for me is kind of, for lack of a better term, like troubling, because I feel like writing is such a special gift that to put that into to the hands of a machine, and it loses a certain essence, nuance, a certain feel, a certain touch that you can only get from a human. So I would say definitely continue to read, and then write as much as you possibly can. But most importantly, read as much as you possibly can. Because this is how you start to learn how the format and what the art of storytelling is. Because there is a certain art and a format to telling a story. And it's pretty standard. And it follows any TV show, any TV series, any movie that you've ever seen. They all follow a specific format. Now, how they do it and how that story comes about is different, but there is a format that everything follows, storytelling 101. And it's like, unless you know that, then it's going to, not knowing that makes it hard to actually write. But don't be there's you can self-publish. It's so much easier to self-publish right now. So it's don't wait for somebody to say yes. you know, because if you're waiting for somebody to say yes, then you'll never get out there. Say yes to yourself, and then you continue to hone and perfect your craft as you go along. And I know you asked about, I don't know if you asked for one thing, but it's a couple more things. I'm going to add one more thing to that, and that is, do not be afraid of criticism. Okay, do not be afraid of criticism from your peers, and from your potential fans. Okay, criticism is important to bettering yourself, and to growing your talent, and to growing and perfecting your craft. Criticism is necessary. Once you feel like you are above criticism, then I think at that point you have plateaued as the artist that you want to be.
Yeah.
Mm.
And Tiffany and Nicole, can I add to that? Because
Sure.
I was that new writer, right? When Amari came to me with the idea, and I'm sitting in my cubicle at work, and I'm telling him, okay, you got to go ahead and use my children, your nieces, as the characters, the inspiration behind the story. And
I
then
was
he
going to do it
goes,
anyway.
yeah.
I'm joking. Sorry, Cherelle. Go ahead.
I thought he was asking me for permission. I thought he was asking for permission. I'm sorry. So then he goes, okay, well, you go ahead and write the first book. And I'm like, what?
Right.
Like, I was automatically intimidated because I didn't have that. I'm not a seasoned author, or a writer in the same traditional sense that he was, that how I looked at him as being a seasoned author. And I didn't even give myself that title for months until he told me to give myself the title. But he's right. When he gave me the format and the recipe on how those stories, line up, and I'm like, it was an eye opener, because I'm like, this is the same exact recipe that a lot of movies, books, TV shows use. And if you apply that, then you can pretty much make a story out of anything. And it was literally me just, when they say art imitates life, that was literally me taking elements of things that my children were already doing and just kind of flipping it and turning it into something exciting and an adventure. And I'm like, oh, that was pretty easy. And taking some of my visions and dreams that I've already had and just kind of turning it into a magical story. And that was, for me, the turning point in my life, when he was like, you're an author now. I'm like, oh, great.
Right.
Wow, that's a nice addition, especially for a nice family affair.
Right?
Yes,
Exactly.
definitely.
So what do you hope that the readers will gain from reading the Elle Rays?
Oh, excellent question. Quite a few things that we hope that the readers gain from the Elle Rays. One of the things that we hope that readers gain from it is, well, little children gain from it, is excitement, bringing excitement back to reading again. As I said earlier about the literacy rate being as low as it is, and one of the frustrations that many parents have is finding books that will hold their kids' attention, that make reading exciting and fun for them. That's the reason why we added the whole chapters in the book, because the chapters in the book, each book contains 3 chapters, which also kind of falls in line to what that the format for storytelling is, which is a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so we hope that the young readers, one, to become excited about reading, become inspired by what they see, and become hungry for more stories to come. And so for me, those are the 3 things. And I know Cherelle has some other things she wants to add, but for me, those are the initial 3 things that we would hope that the young readers would want to get from it. And it's the whole idea of it's that making reading fun. It's like there are these images, these big, beautiful, colorful images that are coupled with, these like Dr. Seuss style or Dr. Seuss format stanzas that have this cadence and this flow that they can almost kind of sing along to. But there's also an angst and an excitement and a curiosity that comes along with the stories and what's going to happen next with each of the characters. So there's so many different layers. Those are just 3 of many. But Cherelle, what would you like to add to that?
Well, I want to say, with the 3 young Black girls, right, as main protagonists, I want primarily kids of color to be able to see themselves, reflected in the heroes of our story, and understand that they can be strong, courageous, brave, and even vulnerable, yet still capable of anything in that midst of vulnerability. Because I remember, with the primarily focused on the children of color, and going back to even a TV series like The Reading Rainbow, and seeing somebody like LeVar Burton in this space of literacy, and just that engagement that he had to draw you in, to make you feel good about reading. And that goes back to what Amari said about igniting that passion for reading as well. And so my hope is also for the children to learn the importance of resilience and determination, and knowing their true inner power. Because for me, the story is chronicling and very symbolic with that strength, wisdom, and beauty, from my own circumstances that I went through, that I was going through during that time of this collaboration between me and my brother. And so that's why I look at it as a divine collaboration, because it was just such a moment in my, it was a moment in my life that he knows of, that, it could have set me back, into a state of depression. And so that strength, wisdom, and beauty is what was needed for me to be able to, and from what I saw in my girls, is what I needed to be able to stay resilient and to keep going and to have that determination to never give up. So ultimately, I think I want to instill a sense of also adventure and curiosity, and encouraging young readers to embrace their own unique identities, and their dreams as they embark on their own journeys, just like how I had to embark on my own. So that's the ultimate goal.
And to add to that also too, with the importance of Generation Alpha and empowering this next new young generation, was like, okay, we're up. Basically, we want Generation Alpha to say, we're up next. We've seen what you guys have done in the past. We've learned from it. We respect it and we appreciate it. And we're going to take all the good and the bad and things that we've seen you do, and we're going to take this world into the next phase, and the next phase of evolution, which is going to be something like you've never seen before. And that's the ultimate hope. That's the long-term goal right there, as well as hopefully getting to a point where young kids of color become so used to seeing themselves in these sci-fi, magical superhero roles that it doesn't become a surprise to them anymore. That it almost becomes expected. That it should be it should be no surprise when they see themselves in these roles as these keepers of the universe. We hoping that this opens the door for other authors and other creators, because it's a lot of them in the underground that are slowly waiting to explode up to the top to bring forth their characters in their art, where we become like, okay, all right, just as this is so standard on the basketball court, the football court, and we're not surprised. And as you can see now, with the Black girls in gymnastics, hey, this is becoming like the norm now. Okay, all right, what's next? So that's what we hope to do, to be able to create that with the writing and the storytelling, where it's just like, hey, it's no surprise.
Elevator pitch question, and you guys kind of did it a little bit. It seems like, what 3 words would you use to describe Elle Rays, and why?
Oh gosh, you want me to start with that one, Amari?
Sure, go right ahead, because I'm out.
All right. So yeah, hard to sum it up in just 3 words, but I think
we need 3 words.
The 3 words that describes what the book means to me is absolutely empowerment, imagination, and like community. And I know Amari's going to add to that. And empowerment, because I want the young readers, especially girls of color, to feel strong and capable, just like the 3 sisters did in the story. They're brave, they're courageous, they're resilient, but they also have that vulnerabilities with them as well. And that goes on, that ties into studies, that show the opposite of young Black girls of color, who are between the ages of like 5 and 12, showing them as being hypersexuals and very mature for their age, and lacking vulnerability, that they can't be vulnerable. But we can be vulnerable. They can be vulnerable, and they shouldn't be seen as young women. They are young girls still, and they are vulnerable, and they do need our attention, and they do need help. And so for the second word I would use is imagination. I'm very big on imagination, because I'm a visionary. And for me, I dive deep into the aspect and the realms of metaphysics, philosophy, theology, science, and I just love every aspect of just kind of discovering and exploring the unknown. So you have to have an imagination because that reflects the limitless possibilities we can explore together through science fiction and adventure and encouraging creativity in the young minds. And lastly, with community, I think that highlights the bond between the sisters, which is very symbolic for the unity that I feel is needed, whether it's sisterhood, brotherhood, humanhood. I probably just made that word up. Humanity or whatever, just as a collective. And so either way, that level of fellowship emphasizes like the importance of support and the love and when it comes to overcoming challenges. Because when I had to overcome my challenges back when me and Amari was initially started collaborating on the story, guess who I had there? I had my family there. I had the love of my friends and my family, those who were close to me. And so that sense of community, and that's what the girls do in this story, you know, they stick together to be able to form this allegiance, to be able to empower each other and evolve mentally, you know, within themselves to be able to fight off the evil that is opposing them. So
To ask me 3 words to say it, I would say something to the extent of long time coming, or long overdue, period. You know, it's just this whole idea of like when we went back and looked and we were doing our research, we were like, okay, let's name 3 Black female superheroes. And we could not literally come up with any. And I was just like, and I said this to Cherelle, I think you remember this. I'm like, but we've been on y'all backs like since the beginning of time, meaning the backs of Black women, like this country, this world, you know. But I was like, when we look at the superheroes, never tend to look like you, you know. There's a difference there. So that opened up a whole other can of worms in the conversation and things like that. But I was just like, the fact that we're in 2024 and this hasn't happened yet, this is a long time coming. And you know, the wait is over. It is time for these kids to start to see something much different, and to see something that is familiar, as well as some people would say even unique. So I would say yes, it's definitely a long time coming.
That is beautiful and awesome as being a mom, a single mom of a gorgeous Black young female. Going from
3 of them.
45, I think, at times. It's
Yeah.
like it's awesome for her to see, like I said, also see little girls that look like her.
Yeah.
I heard
Mhm.
someone say this, and it always sticks out to my mind. Whatever thinkers say, you begin to behave and you'll act it out.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, whatever we have in front of us, the more we keep on exposing them to it and
Yeah.
letting
Mhm.
them see it,
Mhm.
they're going to go ahead and imagine themselves in it. And then next thing you know, they'll be walking into it. So
Exactly.
I think this is powerful, especially in this time and this climate that we're in. A lot of people are in different mind frames right now, but the best thing we can do is encourage our youth to keep on going forward.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
so I appreciate this book. It's kind of like a divine setup. Now, like I was thinking about the dates. We need this book more than anything, so they can say, "Hey, I could walk into these spheres. I could do anything." So,
Yeah. Yeah. And Tiffany, let me add to that because I'm a single mom as well. And obviously I have 3 young Black girls. And so when during that time, when Amari came to me with the idea, it was very profound because I was already in my spiritual self-discovery transition with finding out more about our history, our true history, African spirituality, and things that happened, you know, our rich history before slavery, right? And so for me, when he brought the idea to me and we're thinking about, okay, what Black super, you know, hero females are there? And we thought about Storm, it still brought me to what we still see on TV that are not cartoons. And it made me think about other elements of TV shows that highlight and always showcase that Eurocentric aspect of that European female who has supernatural powers, right? And she's like a median. And it got me thinking, like, wow, I don't really see a lot of us in that role of being these medians who can channel, you know, good spirits and having good spirituality and having the ability to be able to have these cosmic um ability, these cosmic powers to do great things. And so I made it my mission to kind of just have imagery for them that represents them as well. So
And we're not saying that there's anything wrong with that.
absolutely not. No.
We're not saying there's anything wrong with Eurocentric images and things. We're not saying there's anything wrong with that. We're not saying there's anything is wrong with Disney, Marvel, DC, anything. What we understand is that the people who create them are creating stories and characters in their likeness, which is
Exactly.
perfectly fine. We need to create our stories and our characters in our
Right.
likeness. And we aren't going to wait for them or anybody else outside our community to tell our stories or to create characters for us that look like us. You don't have to do that. There's way too much talent in our community, too much talent, too much wisdom, too much strength, too much beauty, all those things that we encompass in these stories, that we are capable of telling our children our own stories in their own likeness. And so what Cherelle was saying was that, like, that was one of the things that we discussed. We're like, hey, there's nothing wrong with, Ariel from The Little Mermaid, there's nothing wrong with Wonder Woman or anything like that, but don't color them in to make us happy. We don't want you to do that. We can create our own characters, that look like us, that represent our experiences, that are authentic to our experiences. And we can all coexist with each other.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's totally awesome. Recently, we had Mr. Ron Days from Gullah Island on, who is amazing. Because he was one of the trailblazers too, to actually have, a Black nuclear family on, on a popular on Nickelodeon.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
The storytelling, and you saw a family that was actually not fighting bigger. They actually, they would spend time together.
Singing, learning.
Yeah.
The Gullah culture was in there. And so again, we do have people of talent that can share these stories, different communities, the culture, the history, the traditions. And so I feel like what you guys are doing is very important and it's powerful. And hopefully it'll go ahead and start a trend, especially with fantasy and sci-fi, because we have people that have mentioned that they want to go into that. So I'm imagining probably next few years we'll see a huge uptick. So
we do exist in space also, we're everywhere.
We are everywhere,
Right.
I'm just saying we are.
No, it's
frontier.
very true.
Yeah.
So it's just like having those stories be told. So we pray most success for you guys and many blessings as you go ahead and continue your adventures. But again, this interview was rewarding to me because I'm all about books of representation. I feel like every child should see a book that looks like them.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
But I have a question before we close out.
Sure.
Going into the future, where do you see the Elle Rays series going? I see
TV on TV.
Amari, you start with that one.
My vision for the Elle Rays is that, so I'm Generation X. Cherelle's kind of like X millennial,
Millennial.
So I remember those popular characters in TVs that I grew up with in the 80s. For example, seeing things like He-Man, Thundercats, G.I. Joe, and the Super Friends and all those things. I see the Elle Rays becoming a cultural phenomenon that carries on to the next generation. Just as today in 2024 coming up, Thanksgiving's coming up, we're going to watch probably Charlie Brown Christmas. Then we're going to watch How Grinch Stole Christmas. Then we're going to watch Charlie Brown Thanksgiving also. Those things that existed before us but are still present now, that's what I see the Elle Rays doing long after I'm gone. And and Cherelle is, and our nieces, my nieces, her daughters have children, their grandchildren. I see these stories still existing and being read, and far beyond my time on this earth, and beyond and further. So that's what I see. And we know when you're trying to create history, it takes time, and we got time. So we got time, and we're patient. So that's what I see it going, far and beyond.
Yeah, and that's my vision too, right? Because when Amari first brought the idea to me, my first thought went to like the Harry Potter series, with how that is just kind of like this epidemic of sorcery and science fiction and imagination
Cultural
and all
phenomenon.
those, yeah, the cultural phenomenon, right? And so for me, that's what I see it with the Elle Rays, and it's becoming this big motion picture eventually, right? To where it can start off as an animated series, it can start off as YouTube shorts if it wants to. And I have the animator in house to do it, who was my middle child. To start, she's a self-taught kid animator, and so for me, it's like, yeah, I want them to be able to see children beyond our generations, their generations, to be able to still see this. And that is the great thing about it actually being a book, right? And it's literary, something literary. You can't just destroy it. Well, there have been times in history when books were destroyed, but it, with it being literature, it can continue on in a manner that, you know, you're just kind of like keeping it ongoing with the book series. And that's what we continue to do anyway, with just kind of having these series that's just continuous, even as the girls get older, and probably even passing it on to them to then have them infuse their own stories into it. And then they can be the creators of the next trilogy for the Elle Rays. So I want it to be never ending, like the never ending story.
Oh, wow. And so for anyone that's watching this, how would they be able to follow you guys and contact you if they want to reach out?
All right. So we have a website, www.ellrays.com. Instagram, it's the Elle Rays. Facebook, Elle_Rays, or Elle space Rays. X, formerly known as Twitter, is Elle _E, LLE_Rays. TikTok, the Elle Rays. So you can't go wrong with just, even if you're typing the Elle Rays or Elle Rays, you're gonna get it some kind of way.
Well, thank you guys again. I'm excited about your new venture about this one, and we hope to hear more from you guys soon.
Well, no,
Okay.
thank you guys for having us. And we look to probably be down in the South Carolina, hopefully in the Charleston area, sometime in the very near future with the Elle Rays.
Yes,
Oh, well,
absolutely.
we like to show up too, you know, if you have something going on, we always come and
Yes, yes, so
Yeah.
most definitely.
We'll be
okay, yeah,
there.
definitely let us know. Definitely let us know.
Please do, please. So thank
Okay.
you again for joining us. If you want to see this content and many more, please view our YouTube channel at Gullah Business of Charleston. And we hope to see you soon.
Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.